I'm appreciating this revised version of light that's greeting us. And the light itself is very ancient. It's not new, but it's our relationship to it is a little different by virtue of the change in time, chronos time. Thank you for gathering and joining and being a part of our yoga study this evening. The theme for this month, as most of you know, is love, which I always seem to come back to this disclaimer that my knowledge of love is quite limited. I know, I know far more intellectually about yoga than my heart undeniably knows of love. So this is very much a work in progress here. And I'm here in the same way that you're all students here gathering to learn about yoga and yourself. I'm equally here to learn about what love is. And I have a hunch, or I have an angle that I'm exploring in the love equation. There's a domestic version of this experiment called marriage that's ongoing experiment, and that's one flavor of this. Honey, I love you. Making more space for that and try to say it with as much genuine tenor as I know. And that's one dimension of the way the love equation plays itself out. And then there's perhaps even a bigger canvas on which love occurs, a more universal canvas. And here's the part where I start to play with a few different threads. In Buddhist tradition, they make reference to something called your essential goodness or your inherent goodness, that within the fabric of a human being, there's tendencies towards greed or hostility or lust or any number of things, as well as compassion and other higher virtues. We're something of a mixed bag. And within that, like when it comes down to it, that the human being possesses an essential goodness, inherent rightness, that they're woven of the stuff of Dharma and is actualized to varying degrees. Or as we learned about in the previous month, we're exploring Tantra. A similar idea framed differently, that the creation is sacred, that all this life is sacred, which adds, like more of a personal dimension to this essential goodness. That we're kind of seated on the body of God right now, that this whole creation is God's body. And guess what? You're part of the creation as well, as is this body, etc. So another feature about the creation that I've come to appreciate and know as implicit is that all this is held together by something called the pairs of opposites. So we only know up by virtue of this thing called down, or we only know day by virtue of night. So if it was just perennially day, and there's all kinds of myths that kind of go into this, like the creation of night. At first in the creation, it was nothing but 24-hour sunshine. And then human beings got into a bit of trouble, and the gods decided to teach them a lesson. And then, threw a blanket over the sun. And then the people repented. And then as a lesson, the God said, okay, you get 12 hours of sunlight and 12 hours of darkness, just so we remember to be a little bit more grateful. So by virtue of day, we can know night, or by virtue of death, we can know life, etc., or male or female, right? Wet, dry. The list is an unending list of these pairs of opposites that seem to almost something like a suspension bridge or something, just by virtue of you're an engineer, Mira, maybe you can relate to this. By virtue of this tensegrity, like holds everything in place in perfect order. And while it may be, it's not even tempting, it's just sort of a default where I can, look at my wife's eyes and say, I love you, you're the epitome of love. And then look at other circumstances in my life and say, oh, well, that's, I don't love that so much. In fact, I might even resent other aspects of my life. But if indeed there is an essential goodness, and if indeed the entire creation is sacred, love, which is another name for the deeper mystery that holds all this together. Love is present in both of those polarities. Love isn't simply just the desirable things, the things that I like. When you say, if you were to compliment me or something, it's like, oh, what a loving remark, that fits the love box. And then, there's parts of the creation that don't have love as well. The idea is that if indeed love is universal, and we hear that sometimes, right? Like Marianne Williams, for example, will say something like, well, it's all either love or fear. And what I'm exploring or leaning into is that maybe the fear is an expression of love as well. And we see in, for example, the Hindu pantheon, we see very wrathful figures like Kali, for example. There she is with her trident and her garland of skulls and her long bloody tongue. And you think, it's terrifying. It's like there's a repulsion thing. And yet she's ascribed as the most kind-hearted and loving and beneficent of all goddesses. Go figure. How does that fit together? And that the creation then is edging us through either favorable things or things we may deem as unfavorable, closer and closer to her, closer and closer to the source, that all experience is an opportunity, whether it's, again, desirable or undesirable. All experience is the stuff of our evolution, is an opportunity to draw closer into a space of love, whether, however dim or removed that may seem. It's not as though, it's like the sun perennially shines. Even if there's an overcast day, it's not that the sun hasn't gone away. It's just, it's veiled. And the love is holding us even in the midst of adversity. Okay. So I invite us I don't know. For myself, I'm broadening my consideration of the scope of what love is, right? That it's not just on February 14th or not just in my wedding vows, but that this whole life is pointing me towards it, one by hook or by crook. I'll share like a spoken word thing at the end when we get into Shavasana that speaks to this, and as well as do some meditation around, I don't know, making peace with polarity and inviting more space for love. Let us begin on all fours then.